So those runs, I just wanted to, that's the gauge I'm going to use as far as before and after runs before I put on the Unichip and run 20 pounds. That's 12 pounds right there. You saw when I launched, I'm going to set it up to where I can come off the line with 5 pounds of boost for a launch on it. Now, at a track or something where there's a prep surface, these are just stock axles, so I'm not sure how that's all going to work out. But I've got a race between one truck that's got a LS motor in it and another one. They did LS swaps. One's like a 60, I want to say it's a 67 pickup. I thought those things were heavier than what they are, but he's saying it's a pretty light truck, mostly just sheet metal. The other truck is like a 2013. I don't know. But anyway, they're both swearing up down there to whip my butt. And I told them, have y'all ever heard of power to weight ratio? I mean, anyway, they'll have me off the line. There's no qualms about that. But I'm hoping to have a decent enough launch under boost, 5 pounds, with launch control, so that, or two-step, I guess you can call it, whatever. I'm going to be sitting there, pop, 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 pop. But I want to launch on 5 pounds. I could launch more, but I don't think the axles could handle it, especially on a racetrack purpose or race prep surface. So we're going to do that. But next up, as I mentioned, this thing's getting painted. The engine bay is. I'm going to change that cam cover out, do some modifications back there. So the next update you see either are going, if I see something that I believe is noteworthy that I need to share with you guys, then I'm going to do it. But if not, the next update you see, all that's going to be done. So I'm going to try to focus and get that part of it done. Then Unichip time. Okay. While this is down, I'm going to clean up all the wiring, like right here. I'm going to take off all that loom crap and I'm going to wrap it in that cloth tape. I just want to kind of tighten stuff up. That loom stuff, I don't like it anymore. But anyway, so all that stuff's going to get cleaned up. All this is going to get managed. Everything barfing out of the firewall back there is going to get managed. Battery missing, so I want to clean up all this and do something with all that you can see. But short of that, so all this is going to be, the engine base painted. The firewall is going to have the gold heat reflective. That felt stuff's coming off. But in the before I do that, because I plan to sell this in the fall, I meant to do it in the spring. I just got lazy. Like I said, I was in a malaise. But I was sitting here doing something on the Saturn the other day, and the Viper, just from the back, my garage has the slightest of a grade on it. Saw water coming out. The dang thermostat housing is leaking. It's just the housing, I guess. The thermostat's fine as far as I can tell. So I've ordered a gasket. Parts are getting harder and harder to find for that thing. And I had purpose to give it to my son, but this thing, it's a 95. It has no traction control, no ABS, no airbags. And I tell you, there's been a time or two where I thought I had posted my last video of anything because I got squirrely crazy in it. And if you've ever seen these things drag racing or anything, it's like they get about, I don't know, 300 feet into the run and they just take a hard right turn or a hard left turn. That's on ones with traction control. I saw one at Texas 2K, I think, or here recently. You might have seen the clip. I think it was racing a Honda Civic. It was beating the Civic, but as soon as it cleared the Civic, it took a hard right turn into a light pole. I totaled it out. But so I didn't want to give it to my son. My son's wrecked his own car. I think you guys remember I told you he wrecked this car. Not badly, but enough that it's clear the guy has judgment issues and inability to control the vehicle. And the last thing I want to do is stick my 20-year-old son in I saw a video on this one time, in one of the top 10 cars that'll kill you. So parts are getting tough to find. I read I was on a parts dealer's website, and someone had a Q&A on there. Hey, which your Viper should I buy? And he says, stay away from the Gen 1s because parts are hard to find for it. and getting harder to find for it. And so right now the top's off, the hard top. I'm gonna put that on when I sell it. I've got the tonneau top over here, the original top in the side windows. And but the hard top is going to help with AC, help with rain management. So if you want to drive it on a not so clear day, you can without fear of it getting drenched. But I'll get this out of here. My goal is to get at least 40,000 for it. I've done some modifications to it and stuff like that. Metal head gaskets. The heads are already worked. I think it has a cam in it, but it's a mild cam. It was put back in 95 or something like that when the guy first bought it, the first owner. So anyway, 40,000 bucks. I'm going to take that. I'm going to give my son 20,000, and he wants to buy the Toyota GR Corolla, the all-wheel drive 300 3-cylinder, and that's going to be his car. So yes, he may still have an uh-oh or maybe even a severe issue. Just depends. You can't control him, right? But at least he'll have airbag, traction control, ABS, all that stuff to help him, you know. So, and then I'll take the other funds. I'm not going to sink them into this, but it'll help pay for the cost of the paint job, any other little things that I want to do. I want to get the rear seats. I still want to get those leathered. I'm still going to get the sunroof either replaced or repaired. It does leak a little bit when raining. So yeah. So updates are coming. Stay tuned. The little bit of updates I gave you, yeah, here in this video, you'll get a lot more next time. And the runs were supposed to be for also where I don't know if I included in here, but I yelled speed cut because I need to know where the mileage is cutting off at, because the clamps that you use, that you put on for the Unichip, you have to know where the cut is and then come back about 10 miles an hour. And what I suspect is going to happen, the speedometer is going to stop just shy of the actual cut, but my speed's going to keep going. I think that's how the cut works. I don't think the speedometer cable is going to continue on. I'm not sure. But you have to be careful, because although these tires are speed rated for that, it's a 4-lug hub. And I hear different stories from different people. I don't want to be up 140, 150 miles an hour if the RPMs will allow it, and then have a wheel chunk off. That's going to make for a bad day. But so the other runs, I wanted to see where the boost came on at, what the acceleration was. Again, it's 12 pounds, and my goal is 20, as I've said. So I want to see the difference, and I'm going to use a comparison video later when that all happens to show the difference in rate of acceleration. Again, the 2 steps I can leave under boost, because right now, you know, it just comes up and it's revving, but it's not under boost. All I'm doing is hitting the stock speed limiter right there around, I think it's 4,000 RPM, somewhere about there. So anyway, that's what we're going to do. All right, so wrap this pipe. This is the edit. This is where I took the I put the resonator in here. It's just a single one, about 2 feet. Wrapped it. Of course, now it's going to be moved up higher up inside the tunnel, so I can make room and move the charge piping up higher to clear for ground clearance. Right now, I wrapped it, and it's kind of chilly. I wrapped it, and of course, to make it an easier wrap, you're supposed to wet the wrap, and that's what I did. And of course, now it's wet, it won't be painted too well, so I've got a heat gun blowing directly through there to help dry everything up quickly. And I'm gonna throw some paint on it. The paint is this high temp silicone stuff. I've tried to paint, when I redid the header here, I tried to paint it with like regular high temp black paint, because I couldn't find this stuff. And it ended up being, it turned real white and ashy. As you see it right now, that's after I recoated it with some of this stuff here. And so if you look for it, the part number is 010301, and it's the DEI high temp silicone coating. So you think it might be the same, but it's not, because the coating before was much darker, like underneath the car. It held the dark look better. Now I imagine up here, probably where the heat's the greatest, it's probably gonna off color like that a little bit. I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm gonna paint this up and get it back up underneath the car and move on to the charge piping. And of course, where you see the zip ties at, I've got them on here just so I can get it painted. I ran out of these metal ties. And so I just zip tied these to hold it where I wanted it to hold. And they're coming today. So once I get them, I'll swap them out for the steel ones and then paint those as well. Here we're getting some paint on it. Now, I'll tell you, for those who when you just do header wrap, yeah, you can just leave it just like it is without spraying the stuff on here. But they call this thing like a sealer. And as a matter of fact, on the can, it says seals and protects exhaust wraps. Great for engine blocks, yada, yada, yada. Up to 1500 degrees. Now, why I'm a believer in it, because, for instance, when I had this heat gun at the end, trying to, put heat in the end of the pipe here, well, of course it's going all the way down the pipe. You can feel the air coming out at the bottom, but as I put my hand just real close like this, I can feel the heat emanating from the pipe still through the fabric of the wrap. Now, the wrap isn't going to completely 100% contain the heat inside here, but it does help quite a bit, right? So, but with this sealer, it goes in, and basically, if you can think of it in a way, it feels and just kind of almost like putting a plastic coating on here to kind of better hold in the heat. Okay, so when they say it seals, it does just that. It will seal it. Now, why am I doing this under the car? A couple reasons. One, most of this piping is stainless steel, but some of it's mild steel. The main reason, though, because it's a rear mount turbo, I'm trying to keep the heat fast through the piping, right? So as it's coming off the cylinder, if it's coming off the engine through the header into this pipe, if left uncoated or whatever, the heat's just gonna radiate off this pipe, and a lot of the speed of the exhaust going through the pipe is gonna be removed. And so with the rear mount turbo and needing to keep that spool up as quickly as I can, it makes perfect sense to try to hold in the heat as much as possible. And for those that might question it, that's the whole premise behind a turbo blanket. When you have the turbo blanket covering the halves of the center section and the turbine of the turbo, you're trying to keep the heat in that housing to keep the scavenging, the speed of the exhaust going through the pipe in, so that you can keep the speed of it up. You can keep the air up. And it has helped. And also in those cases, since they're under the hood, they're meant to protect keep heat from getting inside the engine bay as well. So that's the reason there. Plus, the other reason I have is I removed the heat shielding from the tunnel up underneath so that I can make room for both pipes, the charge and the exhaust, to be up next to each other, because it was the shielding was at least 1.5 inches to 2 inches away from the actual floor pan, the tunnel. And so I needed that space. So in one of the first videos I did, I removed that heat shielding. And in place, and I don't even think I might have even needed it, because I've gotten underneath the car with this other pipe that I cut. I had it wrapped and coated also. And I could actually touch it and put my hands on it, and it wasn't hot at all. So you can probably get away with just doing this. And but as an added, just to make sure, I put the gold heat reflective tape up underneath there, the little squares they sell. And now that lines the tunnel of the car. And so that plus this will keep heat out of my passenger compartment. So those are the reasons for it. Again, you don't have to do it, but if you think about the science behind it, it's meant to keep the heat in the pipe, which keeps the exhaust gases moving quickly, which spools up your turbo quicker in the back if you're doing a rear mount, and so on and so forth. Now, I've never been 100% on whether they work or not. I just don't know, but I do suspect that underneath the car where I had them originally, there probably wasn't as much airflow down there, so that they probably weren't as effective as they probably could be. So what I did was I took both of them and I just moved them just in front of the inlet to the intercooler on the passenger side. So now both of these little heat exchangers will probably have the best ability or chance to cool like I'd hoped they would. And it's just before the intercooler, so they get a little cooling before it goes into the intercooler to be cooled further. So being on in the front of the car, it's going to get a lot better chance for air to wash across them through here than they would underneath the car next to the exhaust. So of course, so they come in, the air comes in through them, then goes into the intercooler, and so we're just hoping for a better air cool. All right, guys. Well, one of the changes I said I was going to make was the exhaust and inlet piping higher. So before, you could see the inlet, the charge piping coming back from the turbo up to the intercooler. You could see it hanging here beneath, and now you can't. I mean, it was very apparent. And my main concern in that was if I ever, I mean, this thing's low enough. It's got the 15-inch wheels. It's going to be as low as it can possibly go, as long as when I compress during a bump, that the tire doesn't come up in, I mean, obviously this thing's what, 70 miles an hour. It's going to come up and hit the fender flare that's coming over. So it has to have enough space in between here and there so that when I do hit a pretty good bump, it doesn't do that. But even with that, with it being as low as it's going to be with that, I mean, it's going to high center something and rip that inlet piping, that charge piping, just completely out from up underneath there. And I don't know where I'm going to be when that happens. Speed bumps, same kind of sort of thing. The other concern I had was this intercooler, and the way that I have it up in here, it's hanging kind of low. It's actually, if I get this in line with the, if I get right in, you can see that mounting tab that I have here. I think I even shaved this down some. I cut them down, and this bracket goes up and is part of the bracket for the oil cooler. You can see it attached to the oil cooler behind there. And so if I'm coming out of a parking lot or driveway, something like that, I've really got to turn it, because if not, these catch. So I may end up some way, somehow up in here, maybe slotting that post there on each side, and then drilling a hole through the front bumper brace, I guess you call it, so that it'll now go up into there. And then on the other side, use some horseshoe clips to snap it in on that side. And that'll give me that much more clearance up here. I don't have to do any changes with the inlet piping or anything like that. It's not that big of a difference, but it ought to be enough to get it up and even with this lip kit on here. And I don't scrape the lip kit when I come in and out. So now when we come down, and I'm pretty much even with the bumper. On this lip kit, it has a little cavity here. That's probably right at the base of the bumper as it curvatures under. And you go down a little bit lower, and the first thing you're going to see, remember I altered the drain back for the turbo. It was hanging down with that 90 AN fitting. I used a banjo instead. That's all good. It's up elevated, and that was a concern as well. And so that was taken care of some time back. You saw that in a prior update. But now, as I get under here, you do see, kind of go up here a little bit. You see the exhaust pipe right there as it comes down. There's the charge pipe. That's been raised up. The exhaust pipe comes down, comes around, goes up. And you saw that I did the pipe wrap and paint and stuff like that. See how it pretty much 45 degrees up into the tunnel there, and then goes straight, and then there's your resonator, your muffler, and then it 45s back down to go in line with the header tube. And you all know that's pretty much the stock location for where the exhaust would come out for the header. So where the pipe joins to the header up there, it's only there for a good 6-7 inches. Then it 45s up, goes straight, comes back, 45s down, and again, this exhaust pipe here is level with the pipe of where it would be normally. So this thing is raised up now. So the exhaust is raised up, and what I did on that was to create room to where I could then now raise up that charge piping. And so that charge piping is now more up in that tunnel. It's pretty much next to, for the most part, not above, because although that pipe is wrapped right there and coated, it's still going to emit some heat, and of course heat rises and it's going to go right up into that tunnel. And if I were to try to put that charge pipe up there, then you have the rising heat going up and kind of soaking the pipes. Now remember, one of the benefits in having a rear mount turbo is from the turbo back here, after it leaves the turbo here, it starts an intercooling effect. All the heat that's in that charge starts to radiate out of that open aluminum piping. You know, aluminum cools quicker than steel and so forth. So you've got all this length of pipe going up and some level of air rushing up underneath the car, where it actually acts like a intercooler of sorts before it even gets to the intercooler. And so that's a benefit. But of course, riding next to the exhaust like that, unlike a truck or something where I'd have a lot more room under here to kind of distance them, unless I were to put them right under the pan of the car here where it's going to be real close to the ground, I had to utilize the tunnel right there. And so they both got to fit in there. So that's why I wrapped the pipes. That and the fact, like I told you earlier, about keeping the speed or the velocity of the exhaust up so it spools up the turbo quicker. And so that's pretty much it. It's up. This underside's all done. I had to use less hangers this time as well on the charge piping. And I only had to change 2 pipes on here, lengthen one and I think shorten the other. But it's riding up there really, really good now, really solid, and it didn't take much effort for the most part. And where it comes in close contact, you can see right there, I've got some of this gold, covering right there where it intersects close to the exhaust pipe, even though it's wrapped and coated. The one that looks tannish right there, that's been on the car for a while, so the colors diminish some, and then of course it goes black. And then that little union right there, right where the T-bolt clamp's at, I wrapped that section too after I did the exhaust change, so I've got to spray paint coat that. And there's another part up near the front that I've got to do the same thing for. But everything's up and off the ground, so that makes me feel a whole lot better. I can drive this thing more in confidence when I'm going down the road. Yes, you still don't want a high center or something, but at least now I'm going to be a little better off. And I think I've showed you guys before the oil return pump. I've got it mounted on the side of the inside of the trunk here. And of course it goes over and pulls right off the bottom of the banjo right there. It's just a short trip right there. It's all up and off the ground and protected. I'm not worried about that. But yeah. And here's a look at it from this side. And it's not that I'm like, oh wow, look at what I did. So look at piping. I routed some piping. I'm the best in the world. No, I'm just showing the difference of where it was at before. It dangled down really low. And so yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with that. One thing I've decided to do is I'm going to go ahead and change out this alternator pulley back to stock, because even though that alternator down there is a Power Master higher amperage one, or voltage, whatever you want to say, when I have the stereo booming, and especially at nighttime, it's the headlights used to do it pretty bad until I went to the LEDs with everything, and now they don't do it. But in my dash, the dash lights, you know, at night, the illumination, everything, it's sitting there. You see it just kind of pulsing every time that the radio hits or something like that when I have lights on and things. So I needed to spin faster. Of course, that's an underdrive pulley. When I was at Saturn Motorsports, I did the horsepower test of those things, and it did. I still have the graph and everything. I did a before run and I did an after run, and excuse me, and of course I did it really quickly. I took it off. I changed the pulleys out. I changed all the pulleys out: crank pulley, alternator pulley, and the water pump pulley. Yes, and big horsepower gain all across the board. And I say gain, you're really just freeing up the horsepower, but it wasn't a peak anywhere along the line. It was an actual gain. And I might, if I can find that clip or that picture, I'm going to insert it here so you can see the gains. Now, it's kind of a moot point now because I don't know of anyone selling those pulley kits anymore. So I'm going to hold on to it, but at the same time, I want my lights not doing that. So if you can hear me, the air temps would usually hover around 130 to 140. Look at that. 107, 111. And I've been out here dogging it. Coolant temp right now is 217. I love it. Looks like all this was worth it.